I don't want people to think they're going to come to RipViews. There's other sites that'll try to do a more centered point of view or just the news point of view. Fuck that.
And we are live.
Cool.
Joe, thanks for doing this. I appreciate you making some time.
Yeah, no worries. I'm very excited, Troy. Thanks for having me on. I love what you're doing.
Awesome. All right, we'll start. We just before this we were talking about like 8 different topics I want to go into, but let's start here. You're on Twitter. Why are you on Twitter? What inspired you to make the RipViews Twitter account, and why use Twitter? What's the whole vision and mission for everything?
It's a great question. I'm going to take a really roundabout way to answer that, so I apologize in advance, Troy. But the whole idea behind RipViews is I'm a man without a home, right? So I don't affiliate with the left. I don't affiliate with the right. I used to spend my mornings watching MSNBC and my evenings watching Fox News. I'm from the Washington, D.C. area originally. I went to Langley High School, which if you're familiar with politics or the government, Langley associates with the CIA. My high school football field shared a fence with the CIA, and if we lost a football, we weren't getting that football back. That's how close, like, inbreded I was growing up with the government growing up. Like, we had parents, we didn't know what they did. We a lot of government families, 9/11 was a wild time where I'm from. So I grew up very much entrenched in the government, and I, maybe as a result, I'm not sure, but I've just become fascinated with politics. And I found myself not really identifying with either side, whether it's the left or right. We're a two-party system right now. I don't affiliate with either side. I kind of, like I said, would watch the morning news at MSNBC and the evening news and Fox News because I knew it was both. Can I curse here, Troy?
Yeah.
I knew it was all both sides were kind of bullshit when it come to watching news. And so I would at least want to get the bullshit from the left and the bullshit from the right. And so I would spend a lot of time consuming both sides of the bullshit. And so I was like, there's an opportunity here, right? There's an opportunity. There's more Joe Ripperts out there in the world that don't affiliate with either side. And I don't really even care about making money or anything like that. I just want to provide something that's going to show the juxtaposition of both sides. And so that's why I started RipViews. At first out the gate, now I'm circling it back to answer your original question after that diatribe. But out the gate, I was doing all social media. I was on Instagram. I was on Facebook. Facebook is a tough cookie. I don't know how to figure out Facebook yet. I think all of our parents or grandparents might be on that, but I can't figure out Facebook. Was on Instagram, but Twitter was the only one where I could get some real engagement. And so I was like, all right, if I'm going to try to grow RipViews, I really think there's an opportunity for people to see both sides, because I have a lot of friends that don't like to see both sides. They're going to stick on their side and they're only going to consume media or news from their side. RipViews is the opportunity for people to consume both sides. And so I got the most engagement from Twitter. Twitter was also the only social media network that would allow me, I pumped some dollars into advertising for RipViews, and Facebook, after what they've gone through in advertising and some allegations they've had, they won't allow any political affiliations to advertise on their social network, which I didn't realize. I had to sign my name, send them a picture of my driver's license. I really had to go, I had to go through all sorts of hoops and ladders to really get going on Facebook. So I said, all right, I'm just going to cut them out, and just went full bore on Twitter. I'm not huge. I don't want to sound like I'm too hot to try by any means. RipViews is not huge, but part of being on this show, part of why I want to get the name out there is because I hope to grow RipViews on Twitter as well as our weekly newsletter. That was a really
No, I love it. There's a lot there. I actually when I saw this, I was very excited you were coming on, because I'm also politically homeless. There's a lot there, so I can go a lot of different ways here at the moment to say no. But I'm also politically homeless. It was funny because when I was a kid, I'm from Stillwell, Kansas, which is about what it sounds like. It's a one stoplight town. We had one restaurant. It burnt down. We had 2 gas stations.
Sure.
And everyone was Republican. We didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what it meant. I was a kid, but you were Republican. And then by the time Obama came around, I just one of my brothers is gay, so I was like, oh, I'm a Democrat because gay. And then kind of just went back and forth, just I guess time kind of until college. It was dude, I'm just not either of these things. And because especially it's just all bullshit, like you said. I knew Fox News was bullshit, right? I knew CNN was bullshit, and I was like, okay, this is just it's not either of these things. I consider myself a radical centrist, and then we're in alt middle, It's like, I love that. I've never heard alt middle, and it's so great. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
So I travel. I have a day job that's not RipViews related that takes me all over the country, and so I'm at airports a lot all over the country, and I wear this hat all the time. And it's funny the looks I get. People don't quite get it.
Yeah, the double look. Yeah, for sure. No, it's awesome. It is. I love it. I love it. And yeah, so I was really excited when I saw your account. First off, just like that was an automatic follow from me, and just I think you're doing great things. And I think Twitter's such a good place for it. One of the parts of Twitter that I love is that it is like a political op-ed, and it just does seem to be the best place for politics as far as the discussion goes. It really is the town squares. Elon Musk and many others have called it, and politics is like the discussion of your morals and your morality, and I love that. I love that it's a big part of Twitter, and I'm super fascinated by politics, and I was like really excited to get you on here. Like, okay, this is the episode, like the breakthrough and actually talk about politics.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's so many people that are like politically tribeless, and it's just like seeing you're one of my sources for news now. When things come up and it's like you show the left bias and the right bias, it's just like, okay, yeah, perfect. I get a nice little scoop of where everyone stands and how they're covering a story, which I've actually seen it like in the past week or two. I've seen how they've been covering stories. I've been discussing with the right on one time, and I've been discussing with the left another time. I wish I could remember the exact examples, but they're not coming to mind at the moment. But no, I thought it was I just thought it was a fantastic idea. I didn't know your name was Ripper. It's just perfect.
My name's Ripper. A lot of people call me Rip, and I was before that show on. Sorry, I'm blanking on the name. Yellowstone. There's a character named Rip. I'm older than that show, but people called me Rip forever, and so I leveraged my nickname, which is Joe. My name's Joe Ripper, but my nickname's Rip, and then put it as part of the name. But most people don't know my name, which is part of the idea. I love not being the face of it. Obviously, I'm going to have to if I want to grow it and put myself out there a little more, which is what I'm doing tonight. But my intention is to be a little anonymous on here as well, because I think RipViews itself, and I'll caution you. You say, yeah, you use RipViews. RipViews has its bias too. My bias and RipViews bias as a company, our bias is towards the extremes. And so, people, if you don't want the extremes, don't follow RipViews. But I'm going to show you the extremes of both sides, and I do a little synopsis in each tweet that shows the extremes of both sides. But that's my bias. There is the extreme. So I don't want people to think they're going to come to RipViews. There's other sites that'll try to do a more centered point of view or just the news point of view. Fuck that. If you're doing a centered point of view, that's you imposing your opinion of what the center is. I'm not going to show the center. I'm going to show you the far left. I'm going to show you the far right. I'm not going to put my personal opinion of what the center is. I'm just going to show you what both sides are saying. And so that's
awesome.
That's the main view. So don't think we don't have a bias at RipViews either, because our bias is towards bias and then the extremes.
Our bias is towards bias. I love that, because everyone does have a bias. It's actually one of the things I think about and talk about often when I'm thinking about politics is the bias. Like, you have a bias. I have a bias. In every situation, you go in with a bias. And if you're not able to admit that, I immediately don't trust you. Like, right. That's the number one thing I need to hear. I wasn't even thinking about RipViews in terms of bias, but of course there is one. And it's awesome that you recognize that. And oh my gosh, yeah, no.
If I see a headline that shows a very middle of the road headline and middle of the road picture, I'm not going to publish it, because that's too middle of the road, and that's not what RipViews is about. RipViews is about showing the extremes of both sides, which is not that hard to find because they're right in front of our face. You turn on Fox News like my grandma does, and all she's fed is this Republican, very far right-leaning diatribe. If you turn on left or MSNBC, like my other grandma, all you're going to see is the other side. So like there's no, neither side is right. And let's stop fooling ourselves that there's fair and balance in our news. Troy isn't news anymore. It's entertainment. And if at least if we look through that, if we look through our news like the lens of this is entertainment, then okay, RipViews has done our job. That Fox News is not news, MSNBC is not news, Breitbart is not news, nor is Huffington Post. It's all entertainment.
Absolutely. No, it's something that I feel like younger people, we're kind of young, have figured out and are figuring out more and more. And I completely agree. But on that note, something we were just talking about before this started, as far as the biases go, I kind of want to turn towards some like current issues and talk some like current politics. I haven't had to do this yet. I'm very excited about it. I have strong opinions, and like some people, my friends might call them hot takes at times, but I don't think anything I say is a hot take. I think it's always just common sense. So
thanks. I mean, that's what people who binge watch Fox News think is like, I don't get it. I don't get it. A human being with a penis could never think they're a female. And then someone on the left would be like, I don't get it. And watching MSNBC all day and would think to themselves, I don't get it. We just be inclusive. We got to be inclusive. So common sense is, well, everyone has their own.
Everyone has their own.
Important. Yeah, that's why it's so hard.
All right. So I kind of want to turn towards, I'll take it down a rabbit hole a bit, but I want to kind of turn towards TikTok for a second, because we were talking about when I first got on here and recording on StreamYard, everybody, I was going through shorts, YouTube shorts.
Sure.
And you mentioned it. I was like, yeah, no, I'm starting to upload things on YouTube now. So I'm kind of addicted to shorts, and I understand why everyone's addicted to TikTok finally. And we started talking about TikTok. And I personally am not getting TikTok. And it was kind of like my first big decision with this podcast as far as like my morality goes, my morals go, because I never wanted to get TikTok personally. So I was like, I don't like what our government does with our data. I certainly don't support the Chinese getting our data. And I fall on, it doesn't even seem like there's a political side, right or left, where like I just fall on like, hey, I'm definitely for the ban. And I once I started like uploading content, obviously a good way to grow a podcast, we're making YouTube shorts is also upload on TikTok. It's one of those things. It's like, well, if I am willing to bend my morals, whether they're right or wrong, but if I'm willing to bend my morals for no money and just for some extra growth and exposure, well, what's going to happen if I'm 45, 50, and all of a sudden there's a morality question and there's hopefully $1 million on the table? And it's like, okay, if you were doing this for zero money and you're obviously going to break your morals for $1 million. So that was one of my decisions. Like, no, I'm not getting TikTok. I didn't want to have TikTok for those moral reasons. And like, those were really the only reasons I didn't want to have it. I mean, outside like the productivity sucker and all that, but
that's a true one.
Yeah. And so I started talking about that with some buddies, and on my Twitter, I've seen that on my Twitter where like there's a lot of people I like a lot. And like, I kind of follow my bias is definitely towards the center. Maybe if I cooked it all up, maybe end up a tad bit left center, just so you know who I am. But there's people like center right, center left, that like the free speech absolutist that are just, nope, TikTok can't ban it because it's taking down free speech or whatever. As I'm listening to all these arguments go on, and it doesn't really seem to be one side or the other that's for or against, all of a sudden I notice in the background is the bill that they're creating to ban TikTok itself is insane. It has nothing to do with, hey, let's ban TikTok. It's just like a huge power grab that Congress seems to be trying to pull off. At least in my eyes, maybe you can expand on this more, but in my eyes, it's a huge power grab that they're just kind of doing in the background. And it's just like, in my mind, it's like classic Congress, classic politicians. So it's like, oh, let's just use this thing to get some more power. And and they do it so well kind of in the background while we're bickering about something that we're seeing behind the back. They're doing something else completely. Like, have you seen this? You know what I'm talking about?
So I don't know the intimate details of the bill. However, I do know that you're throwing me maybe the hardest topic to talk about, in the sense that it's the most bipartisan topic that's in the headlines right now.
Yeah.
One of the senators that's actually from my home state of Virginia is Tim Kaine. He's a Democrat, and he's a sponsor of this bill that you're talking about that's going through. And then there's a bunch of Republicans who are also on it. So this is one topic at RipViews I don't talk about a lot, because it's got bipartisan support. If you look at MSNBC, if you look at Fox News, it's a mixed bag of what they're saying. So kind of back to my bias towards bias, there's not a lot of bias in this topic because both sides tend to agree. There's some extreme representatives, but on the media side, both sides tend to agree it should be banned. I think it's not a very polarizing topic, which is why it doesn't get much time on RipViews. Back to the Tim Kaine thing. I mean, Tim Kaine's sponsoring that from Virginia, a Democrat. And so it's not one that's often talked about on RipViews. However, I kind of like it because I love seeing both sides agree. I love when we have a commonality. And so, the TikTok ban or not ban and the data and privacy. I get it, but I celebrate. I call it a consensus alert on RipViews Twitter. Anytime both sides agree, it's a consensus alert. And so consensus alert was alerted when it came to TikTok being banned because both sides of the media were celebrating the fact that they probably should be banned.
Oh yeah, consensus alert. I like that name.
Consensus alert, really, man. I celebrate every consensus alert. I'm trying to think of one. TikTok was one that definitely was a consensus alert. There were some others. I could look them up, but I don't want to waste your time. But yeah, consensus alert. If you follow RipViews or if you follow RipViews on Twitter, consensus alert. I wish I could make it a bigger deal. I try to put an alarm out there, but anytime I see both sides on the same page, beautiful. That's America working. That's America at least making the step forward. Taiwan is close.
I feel like they'll get there. I feel like their hand's gonna be forced. So some of the people I like a lot. Well, the type of people. So like, I've never listened to Peter Zane or Peter Zahn. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. He's a geopolitical, I guess, guru in a way. He makes predictions about the geopolitical standings of the world. He was on Joe Rogan, which is how I heard of him. I really like. Oh, kind of blanking on his name. It's the guy that wrote The Next 100 Years and The Storm Before the Calm. George Friedman. I almost said George Foreman. So George Friedman, he wrote The Next 100 Years. And he was pretty spot on so far. He published in 2009. And he's giving his predictions, and they're going to be as good as they can be, which is obviously just can't be perfect, something like this. But it's done a pretty good job so far. And Ray Dalio comes to mind as well, the changing world order and how things escalate to war through these cycles that humanity goes through. And reading all these different people makes me think, yeah, this war with China is inevitable. And how that war will be fought, I don't know. I do see it in a way where it's all just going to be a proxy war for America, where, it's kind of America versus Russia, but, it's Ukraine versus Russia, Taiwan versus China. And this war is it does seem to be barreling that way. So however, I guess
my take on that is, I don't talk about my own politics, but I will say China has not fully developed. The China-Taiwan conflict has not fully developed yet, in the sense that neither side of the media has really taken a stance. I think all of us as Americans are kind of like on the side of Taiwan right now. And so I don't think either side, right or left, has taken a stance there. I'll talk personally for Joe Rippert. I don't like to talk about my own politics, but I would agree with what you just said. My wife and I are expecting our first child, son, here in a month. And thank you. I think he will see a war in Taiwan and China, and that's Joe Rippert, not RipViews, both sides. I think you're probably right, unfortunately, that in his lifetime he will see a war there, and I hope I'm wrong. But I will say, back to RipViews' point of view, there's no definitive side on China versus Taiwan, which side is taking what. I think everyone right now is kind of cautiously trepidatious. I think both sides. I will tell you, when it comes to China, Taiwan, the right will tell you that Joe Biden currently is not strong enough, and China is infringing on Taiwan as a result of feeling they have an opportunity in a weak president. And the left is saying Joe Biden is doing everything he can right now, and there's all these war drills going on, and that's just the right publicizing or weaponizing a conflict in their behalf. And so that would probably be the only take, although it not be strong. The war in Ukraine with Russia and Ukraine, that certainly has become a polarizing topic where both sides are digging their trenches. The right no longer wants to support it. The right media thinks we're wasting our money, we're spending our dollars. America is not first. And the left is saying this is the front of democracy right now in our NATO, not our NATO, but potentially NATO alliance, and that this is just like World War II, and that we need to support the front of democracy in Ukraine versus Russia. And so there is certainly a divide when it comes to that is very polarizing right now. And one, for RipViews, it's beautiful because we can publish both sides of the war easily because it's every day that we see it, and it's been going on for a long time. So sorry, I rambled there, but it's
no, we're here. This is a podcast, man. We're here for the rambles.
Yeah. So, but it was weird, like when Ukraine first started, there was no. It's kind of like a mass shooting. When a mass shooting first starts, and we had Louisville last week, and then we had Nashville right before that, one of the towns I used to live in. It becomes very quiet at first when a mass shooting occurs. No one really talks about either side politically. The details start to emerge. Who the shooter was starts to emerge. It's very gradual. It comes out, and that's about the first 5 hours after a mass shooting. And then after the first 5 hours, the shooter has been identified. We know who the shooter is. We know their political affiliation. We know somewhat of their motive, or at least we can insinuate what their motive was. And then 5 to 24 hours past that becomes weaponized. The left is going to say, guns, guns, guns. We're not doing anything to stop guns, and anyone, whether mental illness or not, can get a gun. And this is what happens. And the right's going to say, we have a mental illness problem. We have trans people shooting up elementary schools in Nashville, and that's their mental illness. And we have a mental illness problem, not a gun problem. But it takes 8 hours after the mass shooting for that to rise to the surface in our media. And so it's a cyclical cycle that I hope, as RipViews, our goal is to expose that cyclical cycle, because it'll happen again, and understand for the first 5 hours it's just going to be about the details emerging, and then after that it's going to be a political warfare. And so just sift through your news accordingly.
That's interesting. I never thought about it. I never realized that's how it went. That's how the cycle went.
Every time. It's every time.
Yeah, that's definitely one that one actually drives me up a wall a bit. Not probably in the same way that it does for a lot of liberals. I have a lot of friends and some family that's like super just, we need to get rid of assault rifles and stuff, and it drives me up a wall. It's like, that's one of those polarization things in America where this is a problem. This is a real freaking problem, and there seems to be just the polarization just makes it so like we're at a standstill. Like, we're just not gonna try anything at all, no matter what it may be, and it's kind of interesting in a horrible sense, but interesting nonetheless. It's interesting seeing, like, there have been a couple trans shooters now, and that's new. One happened in Colorado as well. I don't think they were trans, but they were non-binary, and they shot up a nightclub, a gay nightclub.
There's one in Florida as well.
Yeah, I remember that one. And you saw like the liberal media like really posted up, and then the details came out, and the story kind of died. I mean, like the Daily Wire and Ben Shapiro's crew, they kept talking about it for a little bit, but like from the left, the story just died, because you saw the narrative they were pushing fall apart. It was homophobia and all that, and just because of these recent events of the LGBTQ community also being a part of mass shootings now, I've seen the right for the first time talk about problems of like, specific, not necessarily all of them, but I've seen it happen. Like, it's, hey, this community has a mental health issue. This is a mental health, so these people should not be allowed to own guns, and these people specifically. And it feels like a transformation of the right's view, and not all the right by any means, but the far right, the far right, like, that feels like a transformation of that view, where it used to be like absolutism, and now it's maybe like a very fucked up way. It's like, okay, well, people that have mental health issues, I've never heard anyone throw out like a solution that has this views, but I've heard the people that have the views of hey, if you're trans, that means you have gender dysphoria, and you shouldn't be able to have a gun because that's a mental health issue. I've heard that take. I haven't heard their solution for like how you would even go about doing that, if that's what you believe. And it's not what I believe, for the record. But I don't know. I've seen it transform.
Yeah, I don't talk about my own beliefs, but neither side would disagree that these mass shooters are suffering from mental health issues. Neither side disagrees. That is one thing that is bipartisan. Both sides agree that the shooters have mental health issues, whether they're trans, cis white males, or trans female male, however you classify them. It's up to you. But neither side disagrees that there's a mental health issue involved. And I think the right is going to say that's the singular issue, and the left's going to say it's a mental health and gun issue.
There's a little bit of hope that if that's a drum we can beat when this becomes a topic, which unfortunately it seems to be happening so much that it kind of just like isn't a sticking point. I remember when Sandy Hook happened, it was a sticking point. It was a topic for a while. And if we're able to beat that drum, we're able to focus on the things that we have in common that bring us together politically. From there, you start making solutions happen. So I guess that's a hopeful point that I brought out of this conversation so far.
I hope so. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
no one likes to see mass shootings. I guess the other bipartisan side is neither side celebrates mass shootings, right? Neither side wants to see them happen. The real divider is whether our current gun legislation is facilitating these, or a right of Americans, which is the rights argument, is if you're an American, you have the right to bear arms, and those civil liberties need to be provided to you. And so, I mean, again, my point is both sides are okay. Both sides are good.
Yeah.
Let's just not tunnel vision ourselves into the news that we agree with. And because I personally,
absolutely. So I'm reading a book right now called Range, and it mentioned, one of the stats there mentioned that if you have a personal belief, let's just say, for example, what you're on the left side of this bias, a researcher told you, hey, you should spend the next 15 minutes looking into the other argument, like steelman the other argument, 2/3 of the people won't do it. And that's like the crux of the issue in my mind, is that
exactly,
if you're gonna, like, I love the reason that I kind of fell in love with politics is because it's like the moral questions of it, and you have to question yourself, and the debates that happen between you and people they're having a conversation with, and you're trying to find the right answer, and there's not always the right answer, but you're just trying to figure it out and constantly improve on your own morals. Right? That's what I love about it, and that was something that I feel like I developed at an earlier age, I suppose, than most. It's like, not that this is politics at all, but I do remember this moment pretty vividly. It might have been because my dad was so proud of me, how that works. But I was like 12, 13, something like that. And I grew up a Chicago Bulls fan. I was from Kansas City, so no NBA team. My parents from Chicago.
But everyone in the 90s was a Chicago fan. We had MJ, Pippen. That was a popular team.
So I was born in '96. I never really saw MJ play. Like, my memories started coming around in the Kirk Heinrich, Ben Gordon, Luol Deng days. That's that's for people that aren't Chicago Bulls fans. That's like Kobe, Shaq days. That's where, like, my memories really started forming. So I hated LeBron James. I hated this guy. You're a kid, sports mean everything to you, and this guy beats your team every single year, all the way through the Derrick Rose years. Like, it was a long time. And I never, so I was always MJ's the GOAT guy. And then one day I was like, man, turn to my dad, like, LeBron's the best player ever. And he was like, what? And I can't remember exactly how the conversation went, but I was like, yeah, no, he is. And he's like, I never thought you were gonna change your mind on that. I was like, well, my mind changed when the facts changed. And he was just so proud of me, and it just sunk that moment into my memory forever, core memory, just formed. Yeah. And so I guess it's like around that age, I just oh yeah, no, you got to be able to weigh both sides. And it's funny how sports and politics can, it's the debate of it all. And it's kind of why I love sports too, kind of. I mean, I love the competition of sports and the tribalism of Kansas City, all that. But
listen, I'm from Washington, so I don't have any. I'm a diehard Washington football, Redskins, whatever you want to call them. Again, both sides. I'm a diehard fan of theirs. I'm a diehard Capitals fan, Nationals fan, Wizards fan. I have nothing on the national or the professional level that I can cheer for. But you bring up a great point about juxtaposition, which is really what you're getting down to, is being able to compare both sides. And where we get into trouble as a society is when people only go into their tunnel vision of the side that they agree with. In your example, you only watched Ben Gordon or Michael Jordan videos, and you refused to watch LeBron James videos. You would never have changed your mind there in your example, but because you were open to at least watching those playoff games where you got spanked by LeBron James, you were able to see that things kind of changed. And then that forced you to see the other side. And so it's important, if I could say anything else on your podcast, which I think is great, is just open their mind to seeing both sides, because it's hugely important. And you give a good example in sports, and I think it resonates in politics and media.
I agree. That's what I'm trying to do here. It's actually, it worked out super well that you were the first person I had on as far as like politics goes, because it's exactly the message I want to send. And as I reach out to people, I'm kind of informing the sales skill of just selling myself, so to speak. And like, starting the podcast and as I reach out to people, I'm very like proud that as I reach out to somebody who's on the left or the right, whoever it is, as I bring politics into the fold of the good of Twitter. Because I really, as I mentioned before, genuinely 100% like politics is part of the great, what makes Twitter great. And as I reach out to them, I say, hey, I've had people that do politics on like RipViews. And that's something I'm actually very happy and very proud to say is that I've had you on first because I want to get both sides. And that's the goal. Everyone should want to digest both sides. Find people that speak to you. And I was never somebody who was, I guess I was pretty liberal as a teenager, but I don't know. At some point, I don't know, I guess when that happened, when the sports led into the politics of the open-mindedness of whenever it may have happened, I was never somebody that was just like so diehard Team Blue that I couldn't look at the opinion of Team Red. And if you're that person, I don't know where to start. Maybe you got to find a friend who just disagrees with you, somebody that you like and respect that just disagrees with you. There's so many people out there in the world and on Twitter and YouTube and podcasts that are dedicated. Like, hey, we want to see both sides, and it seems to be a trend that's picking up in the world. Andrew Yang is creating the Forward Party. If you've heard about that effort,
They follow RipViews.
Oh hell yeah!
Yeah.
I love the Forward Party.
They retweeted whoever runs the Forward Party's social media. I don't show any affiliation, and now I'm including the Forward Party as a political party, which they should be. There's nothing that says we only have to have two parties, but whoever does their social media retweet. We were going back and forth on DMs on Twitter. Back to your good of Twitter point, we were going back and forth in DMs talking about things, all things politics. And I said, hey, any way you could retweet me, I would really appreciate it. And that person, he or she, retweeted me with a kind word, and it blew up. It was insane. And so I'm very appreciative for the Forward Party for that. I don't show any affiliation. They're very similar to RipViews in many regard, but I would not host our cast as RipViews to Forward Party. But I'm very appreciative nonetheless of what they did for RipViews on Twitter, which was great. And we still DM back and forth. I don't know who that person is, but I very much like them.
That's awesome. I love that. And I am a big Forward Party guy because I like what they stand for. I'm always, not always, I get disappointed, to go down a different rabbit hole for a second, when I see Andrew Yang on TV. So I like Bill Maher. I think he does a really good job of shitting on both sides. And that's just like something that I think is needed. Like I think comics are part of the good of Twitter as well. And just meme pages. When my first interview, when I started kind of down this route, was someone did memes. And I think it's like a very important part of society in Twitter in general. But Bill Maher does a good job of shooting both sides and all that. And he had Andrew Yang on, and his big critique of the Forward Party is that, hey, you don't have a position, you don't have a strong stance on anything. Like, he used to say it was UBI, and whether you agreed or disagreed with it, it was something. And kind of just towed around. Andrew Yang kind of towed around it. And I was like, dude, no, like you do have a position. Your position is, hey, we need to have 3 people on that podium when people are voting. Hey, we need to do ranked choice voting. Because if we do ranked choice voting, all of a sudden you can't just you can't just look at the news that RipViews is presenting like, hey, hard right, hard left. If you want to get the votes, you can't just go to those people. You have to push yourself towards the center. And that's the hardcore position. That's the hardcore take. So we're implementing ranked choice voting, and we want 3 people on the podium when votes come, and open primaries. Like there's pieces there, and he just never really brings them up when those moments come. And I'm like, dude, you're such a great. This is such a great idea. I hope they really just bring some like gusto into it, bring some arrogance into it. Like, hey, no, we are awesome. Because I love what they're doing. I really do. And I hope they find success. We'll see.
I owe them a debt. So I can't say otherwise. I don't want RipViews to be associated with anything.
Yeah, no, yeah. I know I'm not really meaning to. I just kind of keep
I agree. I mean, Joe Rippert talking, not RipViews talking. I agree. There should be more than 2 political parties. That makes sense. Andrew Yang, I think, is a very charismatic, very likable guy. He also was a Democratic presidential candidate that had some pretty strong views as a Democrat. And so I don't think that's anything shy. I think the idea of a third party, though, is something I personally enjoy but also that aligns because I don't affiliate with either side. As you look at my shirt, red or blue, I don't know really what. So there's no party. If it also, I was thinking, just came back from dinner with my wife, and I was showering, getting ready for this podcast, and I was thinking, like, where have my votes been lately? So I voted in every executive election that I could since I turned 18, and I am exactly 50% either side.
Wow.
Yeah. And each of the votes I've casted has been. I don't want to go into each one, but I've been exactly 50% in each vote I've casted.
Wow,
it's just a testament that I don't know where I stand, or I'm a man with no land.
This is like the perfect thing for you. I love that you're doing this. This is incredible. Down to your name, everything makes so much sense. Like, you've really been able to like distill what your passion is and go make the project happen. Like, I'm trying to do the same thing here, and like it's awesome to see. It's really, really cool to see.
I love what you're doing too. I was thinking about this as well as I was getting ready for this. Twitter is, whether it's under Elon Musk going well or not, I think is up for debate, and people both that's a polarizing topic within itself, but it certainly is a polarizing place. It's the message board of America, of the world. And so naturally, as a message board of the world, you're going to have a lot of different opinions. There's going to be some really, really shitty stuff on Twitter. There's going to be some absolutely awesome stuff. And I think what you're doing to try to shine a spotlight, and I'm honored that RipViews is included on that, this could easily take off because Twitter's a huge place and it deserves to shine a spotlight on those. I'm biased to this, are thinking doing good, like RipViews.
RipViews is doing good. RipViews is, I'm biased to it as well. I'm biased to it as well, but. No, I saw what you were doing again, and it's immediately like, this is great. This is incredible. And I'll try and steer this a bit more towards, I guess, in a funny way, hot topics of, hey, is there anything you started doing this that it surprised you to see? Like, oh, wow, I didn't think this was polarizing at all, but this topic, this industry seems to be super polarizing. Has anything surprised you this far?
So the thing that surprised me the most is how much I've learned from consuming myself with both sides. Like, I think I know a topic, and then I go in and I'll say, okay, abortion is very polarizing, maybe the most polarizing topic. And I'll go in and read just down a wormhole of things about abortion from the left and a wormhole of things about abortion from the right. And I can't decide, like, not abortion specifically, but just using that as an example. Like, I find myself very conflicted because both sides present good views. The events that always crack me up is the woke events. And so when it's a woke thing, and so I have an article I'm about to post, hopefully tonight, about woke culture and cancel culture, because both sides cancel. Right now, Bud Light's canceled, right? Bud Light's canceled because I forget the
Dylan. I don't remember her.
Yeah,
how to describe her name, but Dylan something. And
so that person, that they're the spokesman there, and the right is canceling Bud Light. And I'm a Bud Light drinker. I'll say that. I'm not going to say my point of view here, but the right is canceling Bud Light right now because of that. And the left is saying Bud Light's inclusive, and that's what they're doing. They just came out with that rainbow Bud Light can, and that's the thing. And so that fascinates me. That like woke culture or cancel culture transcends both sides. The right will cancel Bud Light just as far or just as quickly as the left will cancel Aunt Jemima. And so, like, it is very much, that is a bipartisan cancel culture thing. The NFL, another great example, when quarterback Kaepernick.
Colin Kaepernick.
Kaepernick was taking a knee, and then a bunch of other NFLs were taking a knee. Who was quick to cancel the NFL? The right was quick to cancel the NFL for what they felt was an injustice. And then the left gets painted, and then the left said, oh, well, the NFL is being inclusive here. And so cancel culture might be the one thing I'm most fascinated by, because the left gets a rap for doing it, but I think both sides kind of do it, where the left will cancel Aunt Jemima, Uncle Ben's, trying to only pull up the article, My Pillow, and then the right will cancel NFL, M&Ms. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, they got
M&Ms got canceled because there was
I
a lesbian green M&M spokesperson.
man, lesbian.
And that's the extreme far right that canceled M&Ms. But that has been the most fascinating part to me, is just like both sides decide if a company does not align with their point of view, they're going to cancel said company. And there's some diagnostics we can do there. And I probably didn't answer your question, but
that's interesting. That's super interesting. I've always associated cancel culture with the left. Like when you just say it, right. My brain associates it with the left.
And the left does cancel. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
they do cancel a shitload of countries.
Now I'm trying to like question myself on why did. I guess maybe it originated with like on-campus stuff. My brain goes to on-campus, and
give me an example. I'm trying to think of what you mean by on-campus. It's been a decade.
So it's been a long time. So I remember when George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, like students were demanding those names changed, and honestly, to take it back further, it kind of reminds me of communism. There's a book called Born Red. It's a really interesting book. So I can't remember the guy's name, Chinese guy who was in school, and I want to say it was like middle school, high school. I read it a while ago, but not even college campuses, like middle school, high school. True story that like Mao takes over, and it's communist China now, and this school flips on its head. Like the students take over, and they're trying to like find, I'm not saying capitalist, but it wasn't even capitalist, like reformers, whatever they were calling them at the time, anti-communist. And they were trying to find all of them, call them out, and teachers are walking on eggshells, and like some teachers are getting beaten up, and they even locked like the vice principal in a freaking office for like weeks, and the vice principal ended up killing himself. Like it's a whole story, and it's very, very intriguing. And it was really what was happening is people were getting canceled. Like, oh, they're a sympathizer with the old regime, and they have to go. And that was happening. So I think maybe that's why in my brain it gets associated so much with the left, is that in the 40s through the 60s is that communism was literally killing and canceling people. And China Mao's China, that time period is so interesting. I read a lot about it because it's just so intriguing. And it's like the last true communism attempt that we really saw, because nothing today represents true communism. Even China, you can go buy stocks in the Chinese market. They have their state-owned organizations or enterprises, SOEs, and everything's kind of a blend of everything at this point. But I don't know. I'm kind of going on a different rabbit hole there. So
you're way more cerebral than I am. I'm just fascinated why the right's canceling Disney and the left's canceling My Pillow. Like, it's
where my brain goes. It's like, oh, why is that? But it's interesting. It is interesting that it did get so associated with the left, and obviously it's happening on both sides.
Right. It's both. Yeah.
Yeah, of course it is. And yeah, the second you said it's done. The Bud Light thing is one of them. I'm sure their stock, the Busch stock, is down huge. If I were to go look at it,
just looking up Anheuser-Busch as I'm getting ready to post this article, it's gone down, but it didn't go down as much as I would have thought the media depicted it to go down. Like it kind of fluttered up and down over the last couple of days.
Didn't think a huge hit.
But these things take time. Maybe in a month it's just really goes down because the sales get published, and the CEO comes out with their quarterly report or something like that. But the day-to-day is not changed too dramatically.
Interesting. At the end of the day, that's really all the executives care about. There's one of the things I find is funny about like companies taking sides. That's one of the polarized things I see every June is a lot of companies post rainbow logos, and a lot of Republican senators and congressmen take major issue with it. But it is kind of funny to me because like everyone knows, left or right, I feel everyone knows like, oh, they're just doing that because they're whatever marketing they're doing, whatever research they're doing shows, hey, this is what people want to see in America right now. This is going to help us make money. I think that's every play that happens, whether it's the NFL with Kaepernick and Nike with Kaepernick. Like both of those were trying to make money. I don't think either one was really cared to take a stance. Okay, what do our fans want? What do our consumers want?
Yeah. I forgot. Was that June? Is that the month that the rainbows?
Yeah, I believe it's June.
Yeah, that's easy for RipViews because there's always both sides talking about each other and that, so it's easy content for me and RipViews. This one might be a little different though. I feel like we have a little bit more on both sides, whether it's trans athletes competing in sports, the Spud Light thing, the LGBTQ plus month of June might be a little bit more of a boiling point than it has been in the past, just because of all the polarization we've had leading up to June coming up. So we still got some time to tell, a month and a half, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. It's been relatively tame from both sides, but I think trans in particular has been very polarizing from both sides here. So it'll be interesting how that plays out in June. Trans is insane. Whether you got that pen, this person's name is escaping me, but there's a Penn swimmer who won this person's competition, and I intentionally avoid using either side pronouns because I want RipViews to be very middle ground. So it's intentional that I use this person, because if you say hers or his, then it's like, okay, well, he's a liberal or he's a conservative. So I try not to use either and just say the person.
Yeah, I definitely go, I guess, liberal on that. It's like, hey, if they want me to say him, her, I guess it depends on the context. If I'm talking in general, if you're a Z Zim, okay, I'll call you Z Zim. But if it comes to like a political debate, or I guess like a debate about science, maybe I change my tune a little bit. But the trans issue, pure prediction here, I think you're going to get a ton of content. RipViews is going to have a ton of content about the transition. And I think it's actually going to, I think it's going to be one of the biggest topics 2023. So I think it's going to polarize not just like the modern day right and left. I think it's going to kind of start to redefine the sub-tribes and help, maybe in a sad way, but help push towards new parties. Because what I'm seeing now is the LGBTQ movement, like different things that the gay community and trans community are starting to step on each other's toes, and the feminist community and the trans community are starting to step on each other's toes. Like there's some heads knocking. Their paths aren't going the same direction anymore, and that's going to cause some polarization within those groups. And there's also things that just confuse me personally, that like the Bud Light can. So Dylan something is the person's name, and I started like looking into this person. I don't understand why the sponsorship of this thing, not just Bud Light, like the White House is like having this Dylan person over and all this. I don't understand why the trans community isn't enraged about this, because this guy or girl, in my eyes, like you go look at like day 1 of being a girl, day 10 of being a girl, like he has or she has these videos, and it seems to be like making fun of it. I'm sure they're not. I'm sure there's like, it seems to be a caricature or a meme of what a trans person is. And I've met trans people and have friends who are trans, and like they're just normal human beings. Whatever you think, whatever your political thoughts are, they're not, whatever that is. At the end of the day, if you're talking to them, it's just like, I don't know, maybe it's like the early 1900s or whatever it is. It's like, oh, you meet a white person or a black person or a Jewish person or a Muslim, and it's like, oh, you're just a person. You're just a normal, everyday person. And this Dylan character, it's weird. It's very, very strange, because it's not a good representation of how a human should conduct themselves. And if I was trans, I'd be pissed off about it. Like, why did you choose this? This is weird. This is a weird thing to do. And I feel like that's maybe not that particular topic, but like there are going to be these things, there's an unforeseeable things that just is going to keep the trans topic in the news. And I certainly didn't foresee this, exposing my own bias, but I certainly didn't foresee like trans shooters becoming a thing and the right jumping on trans people shouldn't have guns because mental health. I didn't foresee that. I just think there's going to be more topics that come up, and it's going to be one of the major topics of 2023 versus in the past few years, it's felt like the whole LGBTQ community was the big news, and maybe feminism was also the big news. I think this is going to be a polarizing topic that pushes people certain directions on the political spectrum. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's definitely something that I personally just noticed going through my timeline, talking to people around me.
Yeah, why I can be a shitty guest on podcasts like this is because I don't voice my own opinion, and I'm very center on things. But I will tell you what's been surprising to me is if you ask me the top 3 polarizing topics in the headlines right now, I would say it's abortion, guns, and trans rights, which I wouldn't have guessed the last one to be a topic 2 years ago as the top 3 most polarizing topics right now. So it's a sentiment of the times that this is a topic. It's crazy that, not crazy. It's just, I would not have predicted that trans rights would be such a polarizing and hot topic right now that both sides are digging in. And the right is going very much into the children's side, saying, don't indoctrinate my children, don't groom my children. And the left is saying these people, just like being black, white, male, or female, as being a person. So it's a very polarizing topic that I, for one, didn't expect to be such a major headline coming into April of 2023.
Yeah, I didn't foresee it either. It is one that intrigues me, and the abortion one actually also intrigues me. Again, I won't make you say your stance on it, but I'll just tell you mine. I am pro-choice. However, I've never seen anyone. I have these conversations all the time with people that won't get mad at me for bringing it up. But I genuinely have never seen anyone have this conversation honestly, whether it's in person or on TV or whatever it may be. Like there's a ton of science and there's a ton of literature in the Bible, Torah, or Quran. Like there does seem to be a scientific consensus that life begins at conception. That there's a study out of the University of Chicago, it's like 97% there's a study in Chicago where 97% of biologists, I want to say it was, whatever scientist says this, that life begins at conception. But then Genesis 2:1 of the Torah, which is also the Bible, says human life begins at first breath. And you see where opinions can get drawn, like, hey, no, I follow science or I follow this religion text, but those seem to be flipped. And it's just like, hey, you gotta at least acknowledge like your own bias here, because it seems like neither side is, because it seems to be the religious right that's like, nope, this is bad, and the non-religious left that's like, yeah, no, you have pro-choice. And for me, it's about when does somebody gain rights and whose rights trump whose, the unborn's versus the woman's. And that takes me down a rabbit hole of, well, should a dead person, not unborn, but a dead person have more rights than a woman because they have bodily autonomy? And I think that's the direction the conversation should always go, but I never see it go that way.
We learned during COVID that science itself is polarizing. Science itself does not have exact science. I hate to say that, but science itself is not binary. There's not a right or wrong. Both sides have their own perspective of science. So I get it. We saw it in COVID. What's the definition of science? We're seeing it in the abortion debate. What's the definition of science? What's the definition of life? What's the definition of mask mandates and their efficacy? So, I mean, nothing is safe from partisan politics. There is literally nothing safe. M&Ms aren't safe.
No, they're not. It's also a good point. I'm going to have to wrap up here in a second. Unfortunately, we did start late. But that's such a good point. That COVID was one of those things that taught you, man, there is truly nothing safe. Like one of the questions that I'll ask my dad will ask me every now and then, hey, what have you failed at lately? What were you wrong about lately? And for a long time, I was like, starting from a leftward opinion, I was wrong about COVID. I was wrong again. I was wrong again. I was wrong again. I was wrong again. Because I just kept kind of going until I kind of learned my lesson. It's like I just kept kind of going with what the CDC said, and I kept kind of trusting the experts. And I was like, oh wow. Eventually, you just kind of figured out if you're paying attention, like, this is all politicized. This isn't science. This is all politicized, and it was an eye opener for me. And I'm sure for many like me. It's that is wild. That even the realm of science is just, and you look into the studies of like, hey, who's funding this study? Yeah. No matter what topic it is, it's all pretty wild. On that note, a couple of things I'd like to ask you before we wrap up. And just so you know, I'd love to have you on anytime, literally anytime. If there's something that pops up politically that you're like, you want to talk about, you want to say, hey, here's what the right's saying, here's what the left's saying, shoot me a DM, man. I'd love to have you on. I love what you're doing. I think it's super, super important, and just a really, really good part of Twitter. So it's an open invite. Hit me up whenever you want.
Likewise, man. Twitter's a crazy place. So one thing I do on my feed is I follow an even balance of extreme left and right, because then I surf through RipViews For You page or who you follow page, and it's absolute vitriol. It's insane from both sides. It's absolutely insane. So someone to shine a light on the places of Twitter RipViews followers don't follow, which is probably hopefully more moderate, more sensical people that are kind of a more representation of our country, or people that are doing good. I've watched a few of your podcasts about different people that are training uranium and things like that I never thought of before. So what you're doing good. Twitter needs a spotlight to shine what's going on. It's not all bad. There's good things that's going on Twitter, and I really, really appreciate your mission.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you a lot. All right, a couple more questions before you get out of here. If there is a book, a message, a documentary, or something from your own soul and heart that you'd want to share with your listeners, your followers, what would that be?
So I'm sure they have their bias, and I'm sure if someone's listening to this, they'll point it out. But there is a podcast out there called Breaking Bad that I really enjoy. And I am a guy that I listen to both sides. This podcast, Breaking Bad, they do a really good job of objective reporting, and they're great. And so they're obviously a competitor of mine because they like to show both sides. And but I don't care as much about RipViews as I do about everyone seeing both sides. And so this podcast called Breaking Bad, I'm blanking on the two host names. They're huge. I mean, I don't even sniff their follower or anything like that. So, I mean, these guys are way bigger than I am, but they're a great listen. I'm an avid runner. And if you like a good hour and 15-minute run, they're a great listen during your run.
Hell yeah. I'll check them out.
Yeah.
Also, great. That's why RipViews is going to find success, is because you care about the mission, not your own success. I have no doubt this is going to be an awesome thing in the future. And finally, something I stole from Lex Friedman, but he is I can't say mentor, no, talk to the guy, but someone I was trying to emulate a bit and look up to. What is, in your opinion, the meaning of life?
Oh, cow. Meaning of life is that, wow, I didn't see this coming, Troy. The meaning of life to me right now, which has probably changed 100 times in my lifetime. My wife and I, like I told you, are about a month away from having our first child, a firstborn boy. May 25th is our due date. We got back from, why I was late is we were running late from the OBGYN, so I apologize for that. But we were at the OBGYN getting a sonogram, seeing some pictures of our son. And so I think the meaning of life is our legacy that we leave behind. And so this is probably bias from me right now, speaking of bias, because I've gone and saw some pictures in utero of my future son, but I'm hopeful that the meaning of life is leaving behind very upstanding young man, maybe more kids, but a legacy to leave behind that I'm very excited about, that's going to be helping our world advance.
That's beautiful. I love it. All right, Joe, I can let you go. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming on, and I'm excited to grow the good of Twitter while you're growing RipViews, and see all the success that's coming to you.
Likewise, Troy. Thank you very much for having me on, and you got a fan in me moving forward.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. You got a fan of me as well.
Awesome. Cool. Take care.
You too.